Hi there. I'm Tucker Balch. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself. I was, until recently, a managing director at JP Morgan, where I was part of the AI research team and worked with Manuela Veloso. Really pleased to have had that privilege. I have gone back to academia. I'm now a professor at Emory at the Goizueta Business School. So I hope to add a little bit of academic flair to the conversation today. So this panel, I think, is quite interesting, and the members of the panel fit in perfectly to the theme. So the theme is, how can we create streams of knowledge? And so the panelists include those from sort of creators and curators of data, to AI that data runs through, to consumers of data. So let me just briefly introduce, you've already heard their names, but let me recap. Antonio Bravo is running a little bit late. He's global head of data at BBVA. When he shows up, we'll welcome him up here and continue the conversation. But we also have Jonathan Pelosi from Anthropic, and Igor Tulchinsky. Igor holds a lot of titles. I'll let him enumerate them for you. But one of my favorite, when I looked at his background, is game programmer. I think maybe that's one of the best qualifications you can have in this business. Let me invite you, Jonathan, to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Anthropic.
Happy to. Thank you, Tucker. I'm Jonathan. I go by JP. I'm not related to Nancy Pelosi, so let me rip that Band-Aid off. My identical twin brother is actually also in the audience. So if you see him, his name is Mike Pelosi, and he looks a lot like me, and he's back there in the back row. And that part's true. And I oversee financial services for Anthropic. So like it sounds, my team helps the world's largest banks, many of which we're talking today, asset managers, insurance companies, get the most out of Claude for the business transformation they're trying to drive. And I'm based in New York. I spent most of my career at Google, then built a startup the painful way, and now I'm grateful to be sitting here with all of you.
Thank you. Igor, tell us about yourself and WorldQuant.
Sure. So you mentioned video games. That goes back to high school, actually. When I was writing various games, they would give us a name, and from the name you'd have to come up with a game. So that was an interesting idea. Now, game is a simulation, so it gets you used early to simulations, and then you kind of spend your whole life simulating, not one thing, then another. So when I wound up in asset management, and I wound up in quant and started at WorldQuant, it's all about simulations. Now we run billions of simulations every day, finding alpha signals, finding new ways to connect them, finding places where talent is great, but opportunity is not so great, and leveraging the two. And of course, very much enthralled with what's happening with AI, and doing many changes to increase our productivity 100x.
I'm curious, in the games that you created, were the opponents or the participants imbued with AI? Did you use AI back then when you were creating your games?
No, these games were written in
Visual
Basic.
Okay.
Visual Basic. For Commodore 64, AI was not built into it yet. But the opponents still presented the challenge.
But I guess obviously the experience in simulation and creating simulations, you've taken that with you going forward, right? So this has been quite valuable. Nice, okay. Wanted to get to one of the key questions I was thinking about. You know, of course, when we think of AI and data, AI, you know, is obviously quite intertwined with data. We can use data to inform AI. We can use AI to improve our data. But the topic today is about knowledge. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts about is data distinct from knowledge? And if so, what do you think about it? How do you describe the difference between just data and knowledge? Let me start with you, Igor.
Well, data is basically all the information that's available out there, written in whatever form. Some structured, some not structured. And there's a lot of it. And that's, every day there's more. Knowledge is conclusions you can make from the data and how you can use the data to enhance your worldview and to do reasoning and of course projections and forecasts. That's knowledge.
So maybe knowledge is a way to view the data that's informed by what your needs are for it. Does that make sense? Or are you thinking something different?
It's to view the data in a way that your needs are for it, and you can measure knowledge by your ability to predict something from the data. If you can predict something from the data, you know something. You can't predict anything from the data. I hope you had fun reading the data. But
I want to get back to that in a bit, but let me ask first, Jonathan, is knowledge the same as data? If not, how's it?
No, I don't think it's the same. I think of knowledge as the practical application of data. I've got, as an example, a customer. They're a very large asset manager, and a distinct role at this firm is a linguist, which I didn't know was a thing. They have linguists on staff, and what they do is they read earnings call transcripts to understand tone, to gauge if a CEO is confident, is lying. The data here is the transcript. The knowledge is the ability to ingest that and apply what you know about having studied as a linguist. For instance, confidence and words and avoiding questions. And a lot of what we'll try to do is how do we bridge that gap? Because whether it's your own firm or an asset manager hiring linguists, the data on its own, as Igor just alluded to, is not that helpful. It's bringing it to life with context and helping take the folks that you've already hired or work with who are specialists at this and imparting some of that as context into these AI tools. So now when you run an earnings call transcript through one of these tools we may have helped them build, it's like a virtual linguist that helps that existing linguist analyze 10 times more earnings call transcripts. That's just a very simple example of how we think about it.
Nice, okay. Igor, back to you. You're a quant, right? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Okay. So my observation of the way quantitative finance has been going over the years is it was, 10 years ago, quite mathematical, not so much AI. Then over the years, more machine learning. But now, more recently, AI is a part of it, right? But my question is, AI has been part of quantitative finance now for years. What's different today?
well, what's different today is the power of the AI and also the correlation of your results to how many GPUs you have and how much money you spend on the AI extracting the information. And the more you spend, the more you get. The latest AI is very, very power hungry, but it produces great results. Previous incarnations of AI didn't really have such a clear payoff to spending.
I'm curious to what extent you can tell us, and I understand if maybe you can't, but how much of your information and workflow is AI-centric at WorldQuant? How much? Another version of that question: how much do you build yourself versus, say, hire Anthropic?
How much we build ourselves?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're shifting heavily towards AI. We're shifting heavily towards agentic systems. We have a plan to have 1 million agents in a couple of years, capable to do all sorts of things, together with large language models. We're going to ask every researcher to create agentic systems. And so it's full steam ahead, because these systems are very powerful. They can take code for an alpha, and they can reverse engineer it into what the thesis was, and then they can take the thesis and generate 100 more alphas from that. And if that's not enough, you can translate it to German and generate 100 more alphas from that. And so the information flow is very, very, very fluid. You can also jump between asset classes if you give your LLMs enough ability to understand the differences and understand what the drivers are in the different classes. You can directly translate one equity alpha to a credit alpha, for example. And we have a big inventory of equity alphas that we've been collecting over the years, 5 million plus. So we use that to leverage our entries into anything else. I think you asked in the beginning, or I saw it in one of the questions, how do you distinguish data from noise? And the answer has to do with legacy. How long have you been around? How many things have you seen? How many things do you have that you've seen work out of sample for many years? And this helps you filter out what's useful from what's not useful, and take care of the incumbent advantage that's certainly present in these firms.
I wanted to draw out, maybe drill down a little bit, something you had mentioned. I think you were talking about transfer of knowledge, essentially. And so I think maybe what you're suggesting is you can learn to perform well in one asset class, and that knowledge can be potentially leveraged for a different asset class. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
And you mentioned languages as well, German, so...
Languages as well, because if you express an idea in one language and then translate it to code, you'll get a different code than if you translate it from German or from Korean or from other languages. Languages are very specific and can capture information in specific ways. So you get subtle variety in output just by being multilingual.
Interesting. I thought maybe you were suggesting that there is alpha available in, say, German publications, but I think maybe what you're saying is an LLM that knows German might think about things differently than an LLM that was trained in Swedish. Does that make sense?
It will definitely think differently because it has learned from German text, which is different than Chinese text, which is different than English text. Like if you even ask LLM what is good for you as a person, health-wise, and you ask it in different languages, you're going to get different answers. And in the end, you'll get a list of like 500 different things that are good for you. And if you can do them all, you'll live a very long time.
Okay.
Tucker, it's worth noting your other comment is also true, right? This notion of this technology unlocks, practically speaking, I think you mentioned, if I'm an analyst doing research and I'm based in New York, practically I speak one language, I'll probably read or digest English published research. Well, that was because there was practical limitations. Even if there was good research published that wasn't being translated by some of these major publications in Germany or in other markets, it just wasn't practical. These are the types of examples where that is just a thing of the past, right? So now it's not only very easy, but it's very efficient to have that same analyst say, hey, go find all the reputable business research resources in these top 5 markets and consume and digest and synthesize insights irrespective of the language, because these models are effectively perfectly fluent in most of the major languages now. These are just simple examples of the type of thing. And as you think about like augmenting the workforce, does that make or break the person's performance that quarter? I don't know. But over time, you have to imagine if they're able to consume all of that thoughtfully versus not all of that. Back to Igor's point about like the more data you have and the more thoughtful you are in leveraging it, the better off you'll be ultimately.
So as long as you're talking, Jonathan, Anthropic has recently announced the version of Claude for finance. What does it do? Why? What value does it bring to the table? And what are the sort of sub-products within that offering?
Yeah, ultimately, we had launched a large language model, and by definition, they have to be general, right? They're trained on the world's publicly available information. And it quickly occurred to us that while these are very effective at doing things like, answering simple questions, if you are doing very complicated financial modeling, they weren't that well equipped to get really deep in that type of thing. So what we decided as we realized we're really entirely focused on the enterprise at Anthropic versus spending most of our time on consumer AI applications. It's just not our focus. We can't be all things to all people, so we'll choose a couple verticals to be the best at. And we chose finance as the first one. And the next we just announced is healthcare, life sciences. So what that practically translates to is at the training level, we don't just have researchers who help build our large language models. We have researchers that are ex-quants that come from the Citadels and the Jane Streets and they're actually doing RL and reinforcement learning on very specific financial tasks. So you're giving it very hard financial challenges and saying, hey, listen, we're going to hire experts to validate this. And through RL and in pre-training, we can get it to be very, very good. So that's one layer. The next layer is most of you are working in finance, obviously. And you've touched on this theme of data and knowledge. Without context of the data you need to do your job, let's say it's an analyst who, sure, Claude, you were trained on the internet and you're good at discounted cash flows. That's one thing, but I need to query financial data from an S&P or FactSet. So what we did was we just made it easy to query that data. We invented something called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. Historically, it was very hard to query that data with a large language model reliably. So we added that layer. So now you can plug that in. So when I type and ask it to do financial analysis, it doesn't like guess. It says, let me literally pull this from FactSet and show you where I pulled it from. Because demystifying this is a huge part of what we do. In our business, in the finance world, I mean, Igor is, I think, the epitome of it with what they do. You don't have the luxury of like guessing or hoping the number is right. It has to be right. If I'm working with an investment bank or I'm working in retail banking. And then the last layer is give it practical skills. So here's a very simple example. Claude, in the past, couldn't make a PowerPoint presentation. You could make a cool artifact that you could take a screenshot of and bring into PowerPoint. That's annoying. No one wants to do that. So now it can. Not only can it make a PowerPoint presentation, but you could upload your branded template, and it can basically, I joke, crack its neck and make a PowerPoint presentation with that brand. And then it can make an Excel file. It can make a discounted cash flow. So these are the things we basically built as like a scaffolding. So now when you use Claude for finance, it's effectively tailored for financial use cases. And that's what we launched.
Question about that. We are seeing more and more specialized LLMs Maybe you can shed some light on this, though. Why not build an Uber LLM? Just add finance to the collection of things that Claude can do. Does that somehow dilute its capabilities, or?
No, it's in fact exactly what we did. So when I say we specifically trained Claude to be good at financial tasks, the entire Claude we just launched, Sonnet 4.5 model, benefits from that. So now if the ordinary consumer just happens to be asking a question, they'll also benefit from that horsepower, versus we're not carving out something bespoke that only people in finance can use. We've just made the core model explicitly very good at financial tasks.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it is like the overall model getting better and better.
So it's not a separate product.
The solution is, think of it as a SKU. So if you've ever gone to Claude.ai, that's our chat. We've made an enterprise version of that SKU for financial services, but ultimately everyone can access that baseline model.
Interesting. A lingering question I wanted to get back with you, Igor. With your experience in quantitative investing and languages, I'm just curious, what's the best language to think of finance in?
It's definitely English.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because so much training has happened in English. I think Wikipedia used to account for like 70% of the training of the models. So the best knowledge comes from where the most text is, good text.
But I've heard from others that unfortunately I'm unilingual, but my wife is multilingual, and she's from Sweden. She'll sometimes tell me that they just think differently. They have words for things that we don't even have, so I wonder sometimes about that. But interesting. Okay, now, your company has fire hose of data coming in that you pay for and so on. But how do you find signals in that data? How do you distinguish signal from the noise? And kind of a follow-on question is, does AI help you do that? But let's start. How do you distinguish signal from noise?
Well, this is where legacy comes in. We've been extracting signals forever, so we have a lot of algorithms that help us identify signal from noise. We even have LLMs that can do that. We have all kinds of...
So you've got existing frameworks that help you extract that, right? Okay.
Right. And as more and more data comes in, you typically decompose it to features, and then you add features to a machine learning system when you see, is there an improvement or is there no improvement? And that's how you decide. Is it noise or is it not noise?
I'm wondering along those lines, certainly large language models provide different and new ways to harness AI and so on. And I know from your quantitative background, the mechanisms you discussed, have been around for tens of years. Have LLMs caused you to think about it differently, to rearrange your workflow of data into trading?
I think it has. I think prior to LLMs, it wasn't possible to parse documents and more or less understand the meaning. And once you can do that, you can create workflows that are effective because there's enough understanding to handle different cases. And so when LLMs first came out, I was just thrilled to see them because it changes everything.
I could imagine it would provide new access to, well, new knowledge that you could then work through your investing process. But I'm also wondering if indeed it, not just providing new information, but is the way LLMs work influencing, the structure? Like, have you changed your infrastructure or your workflow since LLMs have come out? I don't want any secrets. I just curious.
No, there are no secrets here. We are changing the workflows to take advantage of LLMs and of agents. In particular, I've seen systems that use agents, and the results are very, very good. And the agents don't sleep, and they share the information they learn with every other agent. So the growth is...
There's been a lot of conversation today about what is an agent. A lot of people have different views or opinions. In your context, when you talk about an agent, working for you at WorldQuant, what does it mean? How is an agent different from, say, just an LLM?
An agent may include an LLM, but an agent is some piece of software that does a very specific thing. For example, it can run a simulation. That's agent 1. Agent 2 can look at the results of simulation and decide, is it good, is it bad, and what inputs into the simulation should be changed.
Simulations again. Okay, good.
Yeah, always simulations. And another agent can read academic papers and decide what parts of the papers are either alphas or features. And yet another agent can kind of orchestrate the whole thing and run it all together and get the...
Interesting. So they're specialized. That's the key idea, is that individual agents...
Yes, they're specialized, but there's no limit of places to specialize.
Jonathan, there was an article out this week about OpenAI hiring hundreds of former bankers from JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and apparently they've got them all in a sweatshop typing their knowledge in. Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to mock OpenAI, but how do you mentioned that you all do have those experts. I'm curious about the process. How do you leverage the expertise of someone like this?
Yes, I won't comment on their working conditions for those bankers, but I can share how that practically works, and I touched on this a bit earlier. The idea of reinforcement learning is, think of like reward-based learning. So if you're actually having these bankers in a factory floor now for their computers, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to give an assignment to Claude. I want you to do a weighted average cost of capital calculation. And it does it. Now, our researchers are all like some of the best in the world, right? They're like savants in their respective field. Eventually, some of these quantitative or financial modeling type tasks are beyond like their just area of interest, and they don't even understand if that's right. So you want the expert to do it. So the expert will sit there and be like, that's wrong, and here's why. And then you'll feed that back to Claude. It'll try again. A bit better, but still wrong. And try again. And that person's in the no window warehouse, cranking away. And you're going line by line, task by task, right? So do a discounted cash flow. Do this type of model. Do this type of exercise. And it sounds like super laborious. It's the only way to do it right now to get to the level of accuracy you need, because in our industry, it's not good enough if it's 80% of the way there. It has to be like basically perfect. And I say basically Because another big misconception, most of my time is with CTOs and CIOs and of very, very large financial institutions. I so often hear this like, oh, but JP, it's not perfect yet. To which I relatively quickly respond, if you show me one of your analysts that's perfect, okay, then you've got a very special being. Because not only are they not, but based on the evals we run today, a frontier model like Sonnet 4.5, and there's a lot of great models out there, obviously I'm best versed on ours, it will outperform on the gross majority of financial tasks versus an average analyst. And that's today. So if you can extrapolate every 3 months, new models are coming out. And I started Anthropic almost 2 years ago, where the thing could barely stitch together 3 times 3. It just stands to reason that it's a foregone conclusion based on what Igor commented on and this kind of correlation with compute that, well, of course it's going to be able to do all that. The question is, how do we empower those analysts or your team members to leverage and harness that and aim it in the right direction? So that's practically when you're reading about them hiring a lot of bankers. This is something we've been doing for a long time because this is all we do. We don't come up with cat memes or videos. All we do is enterprise stuff. This is, when you read about it, what it means, and this is the steps required to get these things so they're basically perfect for the tasks our customers care about.
So you're in a unique position to see how financial institutions are using large language models. I'm curious if you could touch on a little bit the sort of variety of uses, from quant applications. I'm curious if you see those to other more, client-facing applications.
My immediate reaction when people ask me who's the best and most sophisticated at using this stuff, it's people like Igor. It's the quant jobs. I mean, they're made up of PhD researchers that basically are the same people that ultimately we hire to build models. So on the spectrum, the very good quant shops are like the most sophisticated. And then you can kind of keep going along where a lot of work we do with commercial investment banks, very heavily focused on empowering their people to do better analysis, research. How do you streamline that? How do you plug it into the tools they're using? Things you think are pretty obvious, but actually bring it to life in the firm for the actual workflow they do, it takes more work and heavy lifting. Then there's things like, finance reconciliation. Then there's things like risk, huge area of interest. And to oversimplify it, we sit with, show me the humans that are doing the task today. That's particularly laborious and manual. And we will sit with them and we will build a solution that the intention is not to replace those humans focusing on that, whether it's the analyst or the risk team or the compliance team. It's to significantly complement and augment the work they do. Those tend to be the areas we focus most on. You'll notice today we're not, and we work with 80% of the Fortune 100, but we work with the gross majority of them. Most of them aren't like deploying the financial wealth advisor that's entirely powered by AI, and they're like wealth advisors. They're like, not showing up for work. They'll deploy an internal tool that'll help a wealth advisor, but very few of them are doing explicit customer-facing applications with no human involved, and we don't suggest they do at this stage. If someone asked me a year from now if you could be confident in doing that, I would say for sure. I'm always going to advocate for human in the loop, but one of the cool things about the point of view we have is we feel like we have a crystal ball and we know where it's going because we're at the lab level. And another thing I often get asked is like, what's coming around the corner? And I'll often, I'll joke back. I'm like, you're not using a fraction of the technology's capabilities today, literally, other than like the Igors of the world, honestly. So like, as much as I'm happy to share, it's like, don't get so carried away, because if you keep obsessing about what's coming, you never stop and pause to make sure your people are actually using what's available right now to its fullest. Because if they were, and I could take stock of everyone in this room, there's no way you're using every single feature that's available today, because I have a hard time keeping up. So this is just some things to consider as we work with these firms.
Nice. Igor, we got 40 seconds. I'm going to give you the last word. What's the low-hanging fruit? What's in the next year? What are the best opportunities for AI in finance?
Well, 40 seconds, you said. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the one in front. You got a minute. Go for it.
There's so much data out there that has been examined in traditional ways, but it can be examined through GPUs.
Apologies for the delay.
Speaker.
Tucker.
Igor's last 60 seconds just got.
That's a grand entrance. Yeah.
Let me introduce Antonio Bravo.
Thank you.
Oh, they added some time back to the clock. Is that right? Okay. All right. Cool. Great. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish, though, your thought. Or were you...
So the whole field of finance, when looked at through the lens,
Oh, yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
I'm just letting him finish.
through the lens of deep learning, you get novel and uncorrelated outputs, often surprising outputs. So there's lots of room for growth, and the drivers of growth is basically how many GPUs you put on a job, and how much money you invest in it, and what frequencies you're doing it at, and it's a virtual home run. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Thanks. Antonio, welcome. Antonio is head of global data at BBVA. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at BBVA.
Thank you. And first of all, apologies for the delay. I had a very bad experience at customs today, so sorry for that. Yeah, I'm part of BBVA. I lead data and AI within the organization. BBVA, large international bank headquartered in Spain, but with very large operations in Latin America. And basically, I lead a function that is at the executive committee level that was created almost 9 years ago. And we're in charge of basically managing the informational systems of the bank, as well as all the analytical capabilities that are built on top of it for many different things: risk analytics, underwriting, commercial campaigns, and then, of course, now AI and LLMs potentially into the organization.
So tell us how does, well, one thing I wanted to mention, looking at BBVA's accolades, one recently is they won an award for the best technological bank. So congratulations on that.
Thank you for that. I think over the past 10 years, we've been investing a lot in basically shifting our distribution model, particularly for retail banking, but also for SMEs. I think just last year, 80% of the clients that we captured globally were captured through digital channels. That's up from 19% only 6 years ago. And almost 75% of our sales are digital. So I think that shows a little bit how much we've invested in technology, and kind of we've been recognized by different benchmarks, as you were saying.
So as global head of data at BBVA, obviously there's been huge disruption with new AI. How has it, in the last 2 years, changed your processes and what you do with data at BBVA?
That's a very good one. So I think we're trying to address this context with actually two basic areas of focus. One of them is mainstream adoption of technology by our entire employee base, which also varies a little bit depending on whether you are a banker or if you're a risk analyst or general employee, whatever area you work for. And that's the first thing. We've been focusing a lot in massive adoption of the tools that we are deploying, particularly in our case, ChatGPT and Gemini. And then in technical domains, also some others, such as Cursor, for instance. And then also, we've been also trying to have a very top-down agenda into the main areas of the bank where technology can have an impact. And this top-down agenda is basically geared towards transforming client relationships through digital channels, transforming client relationships through bankers, and transforming the way we do analytics. And then lastly, we also focus a lot in our back office operations and processes, for which we believe technology can have a huge impact also.
One last question, then I think we have to hand it over to the next session. Could you reflect for a moment on how can AI add value to the data? Does it turn it, does it transition it from just information to knowledge?
Yeah, I think in that process, I think one of the areas that we're focusing a lot is how do we capture the internal and human knowledge that is dispersed across the organization and the people that works at BBVA, which is basically bankers again, risk analysts. So we're trying to bring that knowledge, that unexplicit knowledge that sits in the notebooks of our employees, to basically be captured in what we do in, let's say, our chatbot assistant, for instance, no? That is today serving more than 20 million clients in different countries. So that way of managing knowledge that is not as structured as it's typically been, and that also has to be accessible not only for humans, but also for models, either if it is for a chatbot assistant or for a human that is going to be leveraging on an LLM to capture that knowledge, is something that we focus in a lot. Capturing that human-based and explicit knowledge from many of our colleagues, so that we can also fit LLMs with that and basically create the solutions that we are into.
I have so many more questions, but we're out of time. I think it's, for me, been a fantastically interesting panel. Thank you, Antonio, Igor, and Jonathan. We're so glad you're here and joined us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you.